Namaste. Hello everyone. Welcome to ShailGulhati Shiva and Mysticism for another episode of Monday with Mahadev. Today I'm going to talk to you about something that I found very interesting, which is a sort of trait, a leaning, a kind of quality that Shiva has, a propensity, and which is the act of disappearing. That's right. While most of us, the bhaktas, the ones who look for Shiva, the entire world wants his presence and we are waiting for him to become present somewhere, which is called Prakat Hona or Darshan Dena. But Shiva is not only famous for actually obliging his bhakts with his darshan or with his presence, but then after meeting them or giving them some very, very sacred revelations, very high gyan, is also famous for disappearing from the scene. Those of us who have read the Shiv Purana, which is the compilation of Shiva's stories and little bits of his jnana, not as much as there is in the Shiva Sutras or in Kashmir Shaivism, but still there is portions of the Shiv Purana which definitely have Mahadev's Gyan, but it is a compilation of mostly his stories, and in those stories sometimes he is meeting a bhakt or sometimes he is meeting a gana or a king or a beggar and giving him some jnana, and after he does that, after he gives his word or his teaching or his wisdom, there is always a sentence in the Shiv Purana which is, or Shri Shankar Antardhyan ho gaye, and after this Shiva disappeared or was not in sight anymore. Now, in Kashmir Shaivism, which I teach the Shambhav Upaya of the Shiva Sutras online, as I have said many times before, our story there begins with a Kashmiri rishi called Vasugupt, who was given the Shiva Sutras by Mahadev in Kashmir 13 or 1400 years ago. But before we conclude that therefore the Shiva Sutras are 13 or 1400 years old, it is to be remembered that Shiva also tells him that I come here cyclically, time and again, and before you I taught the Rishi Durvasha, which would be at least another 500 or 1000, maybe 1500 years before Vasugupta. Shiva actually taught the Shiva Sutras and Kashmir Shaivism, the Trika philosophy, to Durvasa, and Durvasa Rishi taught it to his disciple Trayambak, and they had a school of philosophy, the Trayambaka school, which lasted for 500 years, but then the art, the science, the philosophy was forgotten, so Shiva came again. So Shiva came again to give this darshana, this philosophy to Vasugupt, and he had given it to Durvasha earlier, and even the philosophy went away after some time, it disappeared. And if these two things are not enough, we have the Amarnath cave, which is a beautiful pilgrimage of Shiva in Kashmir again, where we have the ice Shivlingam, which is formed every time in around June and July, and we have this yatra. And Amarnath is supposed to be the place where Mahadev told Devi the Srishti Rahasya. The Srishti Rahasya, the secret of all creation, God's greatest science and art, was revealed to Devi in Amarnath. Therefore, Amarnath is a very, very charged place. It's a very big place. But we see in Amarnath, once in maybe 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, sometimes the Shivlingam reduces in size. It begins at about 11 feet, 12 feet, 9 feet. It's huge. But by the time lots of pilgrims go, and sometimes the Shivling disappears altogether or becomes very, very small. And there was a time a few years ago when this happened and people were perturbed, and I wrote an article that time that this is a sort of propensity that happens with Shiva, and we should go with the same faith. And not just the Shivling. The interesting part about Amarnath is that legend says that a shepherd called Bhuta Malik found or discovered this cave just maybe 200-300 years ago. So the cave of Amarnath was discovered 200-300 years ago, but that is absurd because the Nilmat Puran talks about this cave as Amareshwar thousands of years back. And there is another legend which is attached to Rishi Bhrigu, who was, of course, again, thousands of years ago, who knew about this cave. So the cave actually disappears. What to talk about the Shivling, which is made of ice with lot of heat, or if heat is generated or something like that happens, maybe it melts and that's our bad luck, not to get the darshan. But the entire cave disappears for 100 years, 200 years, and then it is found again. So this Antardhyan hona, this disappearance act of Shiva, it made me think. The word is Antardhyan, to go within the dhyana and therefore disappear from the public sight. And the simple answer to me was that if Shiva is living his life partly in visibility and partly in disappearing, partly in the manifest and partly on the inside to find the transcendent, the dhyana, is that the message he is trying to give us by his disappearance? That just balance your life between the transcendent and the manifest, between the yin and the yang, between being and becoming, between being visible, available to all, and having solitude and dhyana and chintan. I will leave you with this thought. Join me again next Monday, and I will be back with yet another Shiva story for you. Om Namah Shivaya.